Well, hello there, watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. It's time to see then what is making the headlines with the consultant editor of the Daily Mail, Andrew Pearce, and the associate editor of the Daily Mirror, Kevin Maguire. Welcome to both of you. Great to see you. As ever, though, let's take a look at the front pages. The Telegraph reports that supermarket bosses are deeply concerned that they may not be able to keep operating if food supplies are disrupted and if any more of their staff are pinged by the NHS COVID app. The Metro has the same story, their headline, Shelf Isolation. The Sun declares pings are running out. Ba-boom. The Daily Mail sums up worries over supermarket food supplies, the so-called pimdemic, and senior politicians in quarantine. The Eye carries a feature on the situation with the headline, Shutdown replaces lockdown. Meanwhile, reacting to the government's offer of a 3% pay increase for NHS staff, the Mirror asks, is that really all they are worth? The Guardian reporting nurses are threatening to go on strike over the offer. And the Financial Times has a story concerning the private equity firm Bridgepoint Advisors. So Andrew, Kevin are here with their choices. Come on to Pingdemic in just a moment. First of all, Kevin, your paper, Daily Mirror, reaction to that 3% offer.
Yeah, what a farce. The government was going to announce it around lunchtime, didn't until tea time because there were arguments behind the scenes over the actual rise itself. But 3% in previous years may have been considered quite a big offer, but not after, one, a pandemic, two, inflation is forecast to hit 4%, so it's a real terms cut. Then in Scotland, workers are going to get 4%. In the UK as a whole, wages are expected to be going up 8%, although that's partly because young, low-paid workers have lost their jobs. But that's the figure, 8% the government's forecasting, why he doesn't want to operate the triple lock on pensions. And the Royal College of Nursing had asked for 12.5%. So you could see why NHS workers who get clapped by the Prime Minister, indeed saved his life, have worked throughout the pandemic, saved many, many lives. The NHS gets the George Medal, but they don't get the pay rise that so many of those workers felt they deserved. The government's recommendation of the pay review body was 1%. I suspect that was calculated to be so low, so they could then later come up with a higher figure through the independent review body and pretend it was generous. But it's gone down like it's gone down like a bag of sick.
Yeah, the Guardian suggesting there's now a threat of a nurses' strike over this. Derisory, the head of the Royal College of Nursing, suggesting it amounts, Andrew, to £2 a week for nurses, not even enough to buy a cup of coffee.
Well, the government are saying it's £1,000 a year for nurses. Porters will get £540. Look, it's a lot better than 1%, which was derisory. I'd perhaps preferred it had gone higher than 3%. But even in Nicola Sturgeon's Scotland, where she's always one step ahead of Boris Johnson to try to outmanoeuvre him, she's given 4%, only 1% more. The Welsh government, Labour, has been dominated by Labour ever since Wales had devolution, 3% as well. So, of course, in an ideal world, you'd want to give the nurses more money, but actually most workers in the public sector are getting no pay rise at all. There's a pay freeze because public finances are in a catastrophic state because of furlough. And remember, most people on furlough, private sector, meant they've had often a 20% pay cut in the last year. So, of course, it's easy for the Mirror to attack. And the Labour will say we would have given them what? They haven't told us what they'd have given them, actually. They certainly wouldn't have agreed to 12.5% or 10% or 7%. They'd have probably tried to get away with 4 or 5. But, of course, I'd like to see nurses paid more. They've done an amazing job. But so have a lot of other people in this pandemic too. And I often think some of the people who get overlooked in all of this, those stoical people who've been manning the shelves in the supermarkets, on the tills, in the stocking up the shelves, they probably got pay rises but virtually no pay rise at all, but they never get clapped either. So I'm not trying to diminish what the nurses and doctors did in the NHS in the pandemic, but there were lots of heroes too.
Yes, the Police Federation, I don't begrudge a single penny of the 3% pay rise for our NHS colleagues, but for my colleagues, those police officers who absolutely played their part during the pandemic, to be ignored by a pay body which has had its hands tied by government is the ultimate insult. School leaders describe the confirmation of a pay freeze for teachers as completely unacceptable and an insulting slap in the face. That's the pressure from the public sector. Meanwhile, the private sector, one reaction to Angela Rayner standing in solidarity to NHS staff caught my eye. This is from an event manager. We get it, but in the last year, millions have lost jobs. Businesses, savings, homes, excluded completely, had to start again. Corporation tax increases for employers, drowning in debt. Where has the outrage been for all of us? Vocal support, even now. And this is the tricky thing, isn't it? Stark public finances, Kevin, devastation for many in the private sector, and historically, as we know, more generous pensions in the public sector paid for, with decades to come for everybody.
Yeah, well, no solidarity from that event manager, although I'm sure that event manager, if they're ever sick, will be very grateful for the NHS. Look, it's straight divide and rule. Boris Johnson was boasting Prime Minister's questions, how the economy is bouncing back, how jobs are bouncing back, how vacancies are up and wages are rising pretty rapidly, in fact, more rapidly in the private sector than public sector. And of course, some people have had it terribly badly. And there are, let's not forget, the excluded who got no support at all from the government. But to try and just divide and rule, I think Andrew was doing as he was praising others to try and do down NHS workers asking for more is a very traditional tactic of the Conservatives on the right of politics. It works rather a lot of the time. I'm not really sure it's going to work now because all those plaudits, that medal given the NHS, all that clapping, and then what do you give them? A 3% pay rise when inflation is predicted to be going up 4%. Now, that is a cut in living standards. It's not going to solve the problems for the NHS going forward, where staff are knackered and demoralised, and they're going to have to be there in the front line to get down those waiting lists, which are soaring to record levels. If you're going to retain people and you want to motivate people, you've got to pay them more. That is it. And Andrew will say, well, there's not the money. Well, where do you get 200 million quid for a vanity Boris boat from? There's always money when you want it. There's a 2.2 trillion debt, it's got to be said, but that shouldn't be paid off on the backs of NHS workers. OK, we'll leave that there. As you say, there are a lot of NHS vacancies, which is partly, no doubt, what has driven this. Let's move on to the story that pings are running out, as the Sun put it. Your paper too, in the Daily Mail, shocking toll of pingdemic is laid bare. This is real-world consequences of rising cases, isn't it, Andrew?
Yeah, but it's this wretched app. I'm afraid more and more people I know have just switched it off or they're ignoring it. It's just oversensitive. And I can't believe the government are going to continue with this all the way until the middle of August, because we might as well just stay in lockdown, because so many businesses are going to be flattened by this because they haven't got the staff.
Yeah,
for weeks now, pubs have been struggling. Now supermarket shelves are being laid bare because there aren't the drivers, there aren't the staff to stack the shelves. There'll be shortages. People will start panic buying as well. Kevin Maguire will be panic-stricken that he won't be able to get his daily sausage rolls, and he probably won't be able to get them. But it's becoming a serious problem, and I think the government have got to get wise to it. Because and this, I have to say about this app as well. I checked my app the other day, and it said, "Oh, you don't have to isolate anymore." Well, I didn't know I'd have to, because it obviously doesn't ping very loud. So clearly I've been out and about, having a very nice time, and I was supposed to isolate. It's ridiculous. OK. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't say check it every day, does it, I suppose? You can close your mouth now, I have to say. Is it just a case, Kevin, of the app being too sensitive amidst a variant which is 60% more transmissible than the last variant, which was more than 50% transmissible than the one before? I mean, what do you do about it? Boris Johnson said it's one of the only things in our armoury.
Yeah, it is in part, Anna, but let's not forget on August the 16th, the government's going to change the rules. So if you're double vaxxed, you won't have to isolate if you've been in contact with somebody who tests positive. You'll have to take daily tests. And the argument from the CBI or other for some time, is why not bring that forward and start that now rather than later? Because the Telegraph's listing some of the supermarkets that are having problems. They've got Sainsbury's, Tesco, Morrison. Not every shop, so it may not be your local shop, but an increasing number of shops. And the Telegraph has a whole other list. So this is becoming a serious problem. It's in the NHS, it's also in transport. And if you're going to do it on August 16th, why not just do it earlier? Because if you're double vaxxed, as the government keeps telling us, you're pretty much protected, although there is look, why not do it earlier instead of waiting until then? Otherwise, as the I rather neatly puts it, shutdown is replacing lockdown.
Yes, the Daily Telegraph leads on the pingdemic disrupting supermarket food supplies. Also talks about Johnson's vaccine passport scheme. Very, very quickly, Andrew, blindingly obvious, the PM said today, that he shouldn't bring this in before September to make it fair for young people. But it appears that it may not get through the Commons. What's the story here?
Well, a lot of Tory MPs don't like the idea of any compunction about a vaccine passport. And I must say, I'm rather with them on that. If companies want to do it voluntarily of their own accord, they should. But he wants to bring them in for nightclubs and maybe other venues as a way of encouraging people under 30 to get the jab. But Labour are indicating, along with the Lib Dems, that they'll vote against it. And with Tory rebels, it's probably dead in the water anyway.
Well, welcome back. You're watching the press preview. With me now, Andrew Pearce and Kevin Maguire. Welcome back to both of you. So, we're back to that intractable problem of how to square a round circle in a square hole, or whatever the phrase is, Andrew. How do you protect the single market and protect the integrity of the UK?
They're belly aching and foaming at the mouth over this because, of course, it's a real problem, and they've got problems with supermarket shelves there too, because goods from Britain that are going into Northern Ireland have to be treated like they're still in the single market because of the deal that we've done. But if the good DUP had voted for Theresa May's deal, there'd have been no border in the sea. So they've only got themselves to blame in a sense. But the point is, Britain says we can get around this very easily. There's very limited trade between Britain and Northern Ireland anyway. In terms of what we do with the EU, we do about £250 billion worth of business. This is just a few £1 million worth. You can get around this with a trusted trader scheme. It's been done before, it can be done again, because the goods that the single market is supposed to be protecting goods that are at risk, which might potentially impact on the community, an European Union community. For God's sake, we've been flogging sausages and processed meat and cold meat to Northern Ireland for decades. So it's very easy to have a trusted trader scheme, but so far the EU is saying no. That's the answer. That's what Britain wants to do. But thus far, we're not getting there. Before Kevin starts belly aching about Boris said it was an oven-ready scheme, I know he did. If we hadn't got that deal through the Commons, Brexit would not have been done, and that would have been the greatest betrayal of democracy in decades.
Yeah, you just betrayed Northern Ireland anyway, didn't you, as a unionist? Look, David Frost
could have voted for May's deal, Kevin. Do you think could have voted for it and they didn't?
Look, shouting won't make any difference. David Frost, Lord Frost, the Brexit minister, now saying there's problems. He hailed the deal he negotiated as excellent. That's what he said. Look, he's made a big mistake about it. You just try to ignore the Northern Ireland dimension and the problem with the peculiar political circumstances there because of the Troubles and the international treaty with the Republic of Ireland. It's your mess, not the European Union's. You all wanted to take back control. You just played blindly into people's prejudices and into myths. And as Dominic Cummings, and we can question what he says about Boris Johnson, but he's absolutely right when he says it is perfectly reasonable to think Brexit was a mistake. Andrew, it was a mistake. It was your mistake.
It's a bit rich for Kevin Maguire.
Do not blame anybody else. It was your mistake.
Gentlemen, we're going to have to stop there.
Can you believe Kevin Maguire is quoting Dominic Cummings as some great hero? A man who broke every single rule in the public health rulebook, a man who's bitter, twisted and a liar. I don't want to take any lectures from him, Kevin, about Brexit.
There, you followed him on the Brexit campaign.
His interview with Laura Koonsberg yesterday was like Prince Andrew with the BBC Two Newsnight. An utter disaster from beginning to end for his own self-reputation.
You are all over Dominic Cummings like a rash in Twitter.
Not me, mate. Not me.
Ratching away.
Sadly, I have to draw this to a close. Amusing as it is, I have to say. Lovely to see you both.